get absorbed in, and you are Sonic.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of No Repeat, a podcast where we pick 3 songs every week.
3 songs every week.
With no repeats and no do-overs to create a perfect playlist for every occasion that life throws at you. Joining me are my co-hosts, Tyler Reed.
Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show.
And Sean Evans.
I made such a big mistake this week. I know we're gonna lose patrons from this. I might be boycotting this show after this one. I'm not gonna lie.
Before we get into the challenge, Tyler, how can people submit their own challenges if they're dissatisfied with this episode?
Oh, God, please submit your own challenges. Hey, everybody. Do you got a good idea for a challenge? Do you have a perfect moment that you need a soundtrack for? Well, got a perfect suggestion for you. You could DM us on Instagram or Twitter at NoRepeatPod. Or you can always send us an email at norepeatpod@gmail.com. Any and all challenges, no idea is too absurd, too wacky. We'll take them all.
You decided to punish yourself this week for your musical sins. What did you make our challenge?
You said for my birthday, they were recording this episode, you said, you know what Tyler's favorite genre of music is?
Musicals.
Musicals. That's his favorite sound.
And I regret every part of having Tyler's birthday be at Chuck E. Cheese, the land of singing everything.
Daddy, I want to play on the merry-go-round. There's no merry-go-round at Chuck E. Cheese. That would be a nightmare. That would be a terrible idea.
Let's come ride on the Pizza Rat.
The Pizza Rat, Daddy. I want to ride on the Pizza Rat, please.
You've turned into, what is that Onion article? The obnoxious little boy who just wants a treat. The Ladyfinger McFlurry article. I'll put it in show notes.
Yeah, I bet you are, Taylor. Thank you.
Tyler's like, no, Daddy, I want a Pizza Rat, please, or I'll scream.
I've been a very good boy this year.
Tyler has become equal parts like, early 20th century fancy lad and somehow or Little English Orphan Boy. I don't understand what's going on, but it's very fitting for
I'm one of the children in Sweeney Todd.
But it's very fitting for our musical themed episode. As you could probably gather from hearing my 2 co-hosts complain, they are not big musical theater fans. I, of course, as a queer person and former theater kid, am well-versed in the musical theater arts. I wouldn't say that I'm a big fan. I'm a very musical theater normie. My partner is a big-time musical theater fan. He loves musical theater, keeps up with all the new shows coming out each year, usually via cast recordings. But I wanted to take a moment to talk about a little bit of the economics of musical theater in the least boring way I possibly can before we talk about everybody's exposure, because I do think this is important. My co-hosts are silently moaning.
You really picked his Super Bowl this week, Sean.
I know.
You picked Taylor's. Let
me just explain this as briefly as possible. One of the things about musical theater is these shows are only performed for, at best, a few thousand people a night. So you're still only in the upper thousands of people per year, and shows sometimes only run for 2 or 3 years. And so unless the show gets an original cast recording, which a lot of them don't, or if it gets a touring production, or if they release the rights to high schools or whatever to perform locally, a lot of these shows never get seen, or only get seen by people who have access to New York or London or Chicago, like big theater cities. And so it's kind of a strange art form because we really only see the most prominent examples, the ones that actually get the success to have a Broadway run, get a cast album, get a touring company, the whole thing. And so it's sometimes hard to think about musicals because we think of only the ones that we've seen, which really aren't that many and are often some of the most straight up the middle, non-inventive kind of milquetoast ones. That being said, I have to applaud my co-hosts who, despite their admitted lack of musical knowledge, picked some pretty left field musicals for this challenge. And so I wanted to put that up. I wanted to put that up front because, we're not just talking West Side Story and The Lion King here. Like, we have some actual, like, contemporary stuff, some older stuff, generally in the modern Broadway period. We're not doing like 50s and backwards because it wouldn't fit on our playlist. But guys, what's your exposure to musicals? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Do you have favorites, least favorites? Go ahead.
All right, so I distinctly remember the moment I first saw a musical. And so let me be clear, this doesn't include any Disney works, right? Because I feel like, you could relate, you could resonate with a talking cat or like a cartoon fox or whatever. Like, you're like, oh, he's singing about his problems or, whatever. That's fine. But in second grade, it had to have been elementary school. I don't remember the exact grade, but in second grade, the first live performance of a musical, I saw a videotape VHS of Cats. And
oh no, I'm so sorry.
And the sexual energy was very uncomfortable for me as a child. And I didn't understand why they dressed as cats. I was like, they're clearly people. I'm like, well, they're not doing a very good job of hiding this. I'm like, I was like, they're just dancing around on stage and singing about whatever. Like, none of this is convincing. I'd rather just watch a cartoon. What's the point? So, like...
Okay, I realize listeners will hear this in the first week of December, but it's still currently No Nuance November where we're recording this, and I just have to say, my hot take, Cats is a bad show.
You can say whatever you want.
Cats is bad. Andrew Lloyd Webber did a bad thing. It's bad.
And then the next, like, major milestone moment of, like, watching, like, a musical was I literally saw, like, Wicked in New York. And that was pretty good, all things considered.
We saw that together.
Yeah, Sean and I went to New York as the band kids that somehow were allowed to go with...
The only two band kids, right?
Were allowed to go with, like, the theater people. And so that was the first moment that I probably in my entire life, I was like, I guess I like this enough. To impress the people I was around, because I was like, I did not understand anything that was happening, but all of these people just loved this so much, and I was just like, I don't know if I get this. Similarly, this is a sidely related thing, but also there was a moment where everyone in like third grade was really into Titanic, and I also didn't understand everyone's obsession with that movie. I feel like it's sort of like
not a musical, but very theater kid, very queer kid adjacent culture. So
not a musical.
Yes, the theater kids were into it at the same time, so I think that made a lot of sense.
Don't tell Celine Dion that; she'll be really pissed off at you.
She has a musical theater background. It's fine. Sean, what was your early exposure to musicals? How do you feel about them, etc.?
My brother played piano, and I remember that the first musical that he was really into was Cats. So I just feel like I have all of the Cats, every score in the Cats, like memorized, like it's imprinted on somewhere in my synapses, like all.
I feel like Cats ruined a generation.
No, I mean, I don't think it's a bad musical. I remember when we were kids too, like my parents got my brother, for Christmas, they got him tickets to go see Cats because he really liked Cats. I actually don't mind the music that much. I think it's just annoying to me as an adult because it's like one of those things where if you like always eat something when you're a kid and you're an adult, you just don't have a taste for it. It's not like you don't understand that you can make like turkey, because we can talk about that since Thanksgiving is a thing, and I've heard this being said a lot. Like some people just don't like turkey because they had it every Thanksgiving and they just didn't think it tasted that good, or whatever reason, and just have it. That's kind of how I feel about Cats. I don't think it's necessarily bad. I think it has its place, but I don't like really want it. Now, one of the other musical that they got tickets for was The Lion King, and I don't really care for the Disney movie that much. I just don't really care for Disney movies that much in general. There's like exceptions to that rule, but by and large, like the ones that we were shown when we were kids, I just don't really care for. And maybe it was
real Moana head.
Yeah, well,
just loves Moana. Can't get enough of it.
It's just like, I don't think it's one of those things too when it's like you're a kid and you sit in front of the TV and you're just shown over and over and over the stuff. You just don't care for it when you're an adult, and that's just kind of how I feel. I think as I've become more of an adult and I have like human feelings more now. I'm like, oh, I get love, I think. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the thing about how I feel about musicals, to like summarize it quickly, is I like seeing them. I will fight you the entire way to my seat and moan and complain and whine and find you bad articles about why it sucks and be terrible. And then I'll watch it and I'll say to myself, that was really good. And then I'll never think about it again after that, but I won't complain and whine and moan. That's kind of how I feel about musicals. It's like, I like them being performed, and the idea of having to watch a musical that is, and the thing is, I can always come up with like a nuanced exception, like Sweeney Todd, the Tim Burton remake of it. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. My desire to watch it as an adult is less than it was when I was a teenager, but that was, then I was like, okay. But I think it was just because Tim Burton's like cinematic style is appealing to a story like Sweeney Todd, right? Like, you just have like his cinematography is really good for something like that. I don't know if I'd like Sweeney Todd in the theater that much, seeing it as a musical, but I like the film. But I don't know.
I feel like whatever executive decided to have Sweeney Todd be released as a movie around the time that it did was a genius, because I feel like that was still like Hot Topic was still a thing. They knew what they were doing.
Right.
That was peak Tim Burton.
But I don't know. I think there's lots of like musicals that go to film that are like make a big splash. Like Les Mis when it came out. I know my mom and dad probably own that on like Blu-ray and DVD, and they really like it. And everybody, I don't know, did The Lion King animated come first, or was the musical a thing first? I don't know.
This is the animated film, the original 90s, like 2D animated film, then the stage musical, then the 3D animated film.
Okay.
Well, I forgot about
because I thought the musical was pretty good, and I mean, you already know what the story is because it's Lion King. Everybody, it's basically like a cultural staple for most people, at least millennials. But then, like, I don't know. I think my dad sang in quartets, and he was in plays in high school. So I think there was always kind of like a presence of musicals around, because he did like, my dad was in doing the high school presentation of whatever the spring musical or fall musical was whenever they decided to do it. Like maybe the play was in the spring, the musical was in the fall. So he always did that stuff, and he sang. So there was always like stuff around of like, here's this quartet that did all of Oklahoma or something. Or we would have like old time like movie musicals on. I think that was just more of a popular form. I feel like it's always maybe been there, and it's had some resurgences. Like I feel like La La Land, there's the resurgence of one, and then like, was A Star Is Born, was that a musical before it was, or was that just a movie?
It was a movie musical, and then another movie musical, and then another movie musical, and then the Lady Gaga Bradley Cooper is the fourth iteration of it as a movie musical. I think there have been stage versions in between, but it started as a film.
Okay. And what about Grease? Was it the same way too, or was it a musical that then was turned into a movie?
I'll have to look that one up. I'm 80% sure that starts as a movie.
Or Little Shop of Horrors?
Little Shop was a 60s B horror movie that got adapted to a stage musical, and then the stage musical got remade into a movie, which is now being remade again. The musical genre is very promiscuous.
Yeah.
It kind of like anything can be a musical and anything can be unmusicaled as well. Real-time follow-up, Grease is based on a Broadway musical of the same name. The movie came out in 1978. The stage play was 1971.
And this is just going to be 20 more minutes of just saying movies that have had a musical and just grilling Taylor to see if he knows them all.
I think there is elements of musicals that I do like, and this might sound kind of strange, but like, I don't know if you guys are fans of Bob's Burgers. I'm pretty sure that you are, but maybe you're not. Bob's Burgers is basically notorious for once or twice a season doing musical numbers. Like whole episodes will be musicals. And I really enjoy these, and I think it's because they're like fun and funny. They don't take themselves like really seriously. Like when we were like, my strategy for finding a song was basically because I'm not super familiar with musicals. I'm just not. Like I've seen some of them, not a whole bunch, but I wanted to find something that was like struck me as a song that would be on the playlist. So when I was searching for songs on Spotify playlists, just going through boom, 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 boom. There were certain musicals that I found myself being drawn to, but I couldn't pick a song out of that musical. Like one of those was The Book of Mormon. I was actually able to listen to those songs all the way through. None of them would have played on this list, even though I thought they were funny, and I do want to go see that musical now. They wouldn't have lived on this playlist. This was really hard because there is some stuff about musicals that just doesn't work for here.
So this is something that I had a conversation with my boyfriend about as we were driving back from Thanksgiving. We had a very long drive. We were working on this challenge together because, as I said, he's a big theater kid. And we had this discussion about like what makes a musical song stand alone outside of the musical. Because I got into musicals as I got into theater in middle and high school, and it came around at a time when musicals were having a resurgence. The Rent movie had just come out. Wicked was just starting to tour. Sweeney Todd had just come out as a movie musical. It was, I think, Across the Universe came out right around the same time, which is a movie jukebox musical. Jukebox musical is a musical where they write a plot around pre-existing popular songs. That's a whole separate category that we don't have to get into for this challenge, thankfully. But one of the things that it took me like a long time to realize, because like I talked about before, I didn't have access to musicals in their like real form growing up as a kid. It was the cast albums and anything that got made into a movie that I could go see at the theater. And that was it. And so it took me probably 4 years of liking the Rent movie and owning the DVD before I realized that it's what's called a sung-through musical, meaning it has no dialogue. Everything is a song all the time. The entire plot is communicated through song. And those kinds of musicals, as my boyfriend and I were saying, like, they don't really work in isolation because every song has a narrative bridge into the next one. And I feel like Book of Mormon is not quite sung through, but it's pretty close. Avenue Q has a similar problem. Like, you just get these songs that have to convey so much plot information that they lose the ability to be a good song. And so what I was really looking for in my approach to the challenge was, what is a song that, you know, it's a traditional musical number. Like, it's a song, it has ensemble, it's communicating some plot detail or some character motivation, but you don't need to know the entire architecture of the surrounding story to understand this one song and why it's fun. Because that's true of a lot of these songs, unfortunately. And it also couldn't have a spoken word interlude, which immediately disqualified a lot of iconic musical songs. Like, I'm sorry, Defying Gravity, you're a great song, but there's like 30 seconds of spoken word in the middle of that 5-minute song, and that just doesn't gel on a playlist. Tyler, did you have any criteria, or should we just jump into picks?
I mean, with my very limited knowledge, I had to just kind of work with what I had seen before or what I thought I could reasonably sort of like consume within a limited period of time. Because I mean, like, I've seen like a few musicals, like I kind of have already said, but like nothing really was really like, oh, I needed to be this one. I did decide that I was just like, you know, I don't really need to dig into like Disney films. Because I think they're great, and they are. I mean, I think that they definitely qualify for it. But I think just for this, I felt like it feel like it'd be sort of like sidestepping a problem, because it's like, you know, like my B-side would have been like, "I'll Make a Man Out of You," because I think that's like a really awesome like track from Mulan. I mean, it's like it's got such memorable, iconic moments. But I don't know. I think there's something about the fact that it's about people in a booth recording the audio versus like people being on a stage and like performing it. And I think that sort of like makes it feel different. That adds another sort of like real like context to it that I think was important to pick a song based on. So that was kind of, I really wanted to pick like an animated movie just because that's my best like selection of movies, but I decided just to kind of go with what I knew that I felt like adhered to the challenge the most.
That's fair. Well, Tyler, do you want to go first? I feel like yours is probably a good place to start, actually.
Sure, that sounds great. This week I chose Green Mean Mother from Outer Space from Little Shop of Horrors.
You don't know what you're messing with, but I'm gonna tell you. I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, and I'm bad. I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, and it looks like you've been had. I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, so get off my back, get out my face, cause I'm mean and green, and I am
So, Little Shop of Horrors is a musical that I've actually seen within the last few years of my own volition. And I really enjoyed it. I was like, this is great. And I think right on the tin, I think you can immediately identify why I probably like it, because it was partially directed by Frank Oz of Muppet fame and many thing fame. So it's already kind of like campy, you know, it's inherently kind of funny. It's a little dark, which is also sort of resonates. I think everything can be kind of cute but dark, but also funny. I think kind of if you're able to sort of encapsulate all those different elements together, I think it's really great. I think I was really just captivated by the sort of Motown vibe of the entire soundtrack, very guitar focused. It felt more about kind of like what I was parodying in my intro, where it's sort of like you're sort of like sing talking, and like it's sort of like, I don't know, it's just sort of like they're songs, more of a focus on them being songs, but they're still telling a story, and so that was really exciting. And so I ended up just choosing Green Mean Mother from Outer Space because it sort of was like the climax moment of the movie. I think it sort of has all the parts that I like. The Levi Stubbs performance as Audrey 2 is incredible. It's very characterful. It's dynamic. It's interesting. There's guitars. It's like it gets a lot of. It's a little less necessarily on the plot in this song, but it's sort of like building up Audrey as this sort of this really intimidating character, but it's sort of also lovable in a way, and so you really kind of get that, like, you kind of love to hate Audrey too as a character, and I feel like this is just a great song to sort of celebrate that. So I don't know, I just thought it was fun. I felt like it was just sort of the best song off this movie.
Okay, so I alluded to this in the intro section, but the lineage of Little Shop is really fascinating because it starts out as a movie, like a horror film made for $30,000 in 1960, low budget even then, called The Little Shop of Horrors, about a plant that eats people. Then that was taken up by composer Alan Menken and writer Howard Ashman and turned into a musical in 1982 that ran off Broadway but never gained enough traction to actually be performed on Broadway. Frank Oz somehow saw that and picked it up 4 years later in this 1986 film, which was produced by David Geffen. Yes, that David Geffen of Geffen Records, the record executive. It stars Rick Moranis, Ellen Greene, Vincent Gardenia, Steve Martin, Jim Belushi, John Candy, Christopher Guest, and Bill Murray. This film is stacked. Like, it's a who's who of 80s comedy legends. It's a cult classic film. But it's interesting that you chose this song because this is actually the only song that was written for the movie. It was not included in the original stage play.
Oh, that's right.
And it was partially...
You're gonna explain it, but I forgot.
It was added to the movie in part because the movie has a different ending than the stage play. The original ending is very dark. Basically, the plant wins and devours everyone and everything and takes over the world. And when they showed the movie to test audiences, they thought it was too dark. And so they reshot the entire end of this movie, including this musical number. The song was in the original ending, but it was much shorter and didn't deal with the plot in the way that it does here. And this song ended up being nominated for an Oscar for Best Original Song in a Motion Picture the year that this movie was released. So it's a true statement of like how promiscuous the musical genre is, because you have a movie that's turned into a musical that's turned into a movie with a song that's added after the fact. And now this movie has been readapted back into a stage play with this song added to it. And now they're talking about doing another film remake in 2021 with Billy Porter voicing the plant Audrey 2, which would be incredible. I'm so here for that. This song is awesome. This is so campy and so fun. It's the best of Little Shop, like condensed down into one. I feel like the true joy of what we call modern Broadway, basically everything from like the mid to late 80s onward, is that it doesn't take itself very seriously and it's not afraid of messing around in pop music. Like 40s, 50s, 60s Broadway was very self-serious and it didn't really play with popular genres that much. It had its own sound and it was just going to do that all the time. But particularly with things like Little Shop, with things like Rent, you start to see popular music move on to Broadway and this mixing of the high and lowbrow culture. And I feel like Little Shop is a classic classic for doing that in the way that it does, that is so like campy and out there and ridiculous. Little Shop walked so that the other two musicals we're talking about tonight could run.
I mean, I don't really have much experience with this musical, with the exception that I know that it's basically a cult classic film. I think it might have been on in a couple places that I'd been, but I can't say that I ever sat down and watched it. And I don't know if this song is going to change that for me. Like, I think I would be interested in going and seeing a performance of it. Like, and that's kind of my MO for musicals, like I said before. But I don't know if this would. I mean, I'd be curious if one of you guys knew anything. Like, did this musical like change? Like, Taylor, you kind of said that it changed the way popular music was kind of integrated into musicals. But was there anything else that was kind of like breakthrough about this, or does it like fall into a time, or is it just kind of like why does it hold its own? Because it does. I mean, it hasn't like gone by the way, and I don't think it falls under like what we would consider to be like the classic musicals, like Oklahoma and Gone with the Wind and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because I do think that it's theater in general and musicals in particular have a very like canonized system, very similar to art history, right? In that as a relic of high culture, it rewards things that like adhere to the dominant narrative or that are fulfilling a certain taste group's needs. And the people who were responsible for things like Little Shop of Horrors are just now really kind of becoming the ruling elite of the musical industry, the musical theater industry. So I think it's probably not considered a classic in the same way that like Oklahoma and West Side Story are now. But in 20 years, maybe. I think it's probably just a little too recent. I mean, it ran as an off-Broadway show in 1982 and is mostly remembered for its movie. Like, the fact that it didn't make it to Broadway makes a big difference for some people. And I think that combined with just, like, how recent it is probably why we don't consider it a classic.
I do feel like this is a hard challenge to sort of provide critique, feedback, anything on if we haven't seen or understand the context of the work.
Well, I think that's actually a pretty good segue because we accidentally stumbled into chronological order, and I think we should just stick with it.
Sure.
Because when we talk about, seeing things within their cultural context, even though I am the self-proclaimed musical fan of the three of us, I did make a very normie pick this week.
Yeah, you did, buddy.
In that I picked, wait for it, from Hamilton.
Changes the game, plays and he raises the stakes. And if there's a reason he seems to thrive and so few survive, then goddammit, I'm willing to wait for it. I'm willing to wait for it. Life doesn't discriminate between the sinners and the saints. It takes and it takes and it takes, and we give it anyway. We rise and we fall and we fall. Make no mistakes, and if there's a reason I'm still alive and so many have died, then I'm willing to.
I mean, you have to know what Hamilton is if you're listening to us talk right now. And it's not, 20 years in the future, 100 years in the future. Hamilton is at this point the highest selling Broadway musical of the last 50 years. The cast album is the highest selling cast album of all time. It's an absolute sensation. It's bigger than anything the industry has ever seen before. Part of the reason I picked it is because of that sensation. I'm not going to lie. But I also think that it represents a high point of what we were just talking about, where popular music makes its way onto Broadway. In Hamilton, you have a Puerto Rican-American composer, Lin-Manuel Miranda, telling the story of an American founding father through rap, salsa, dance hall, reggae, arena rock. It's a who's who of 20th century musical genres, writing about things that happened in the 1770s and 80s. It's the kind of show that could only have happened exactly when it happened in 2016, 2017, especially with an all people of color cast, which was a huge deal at the time. This song in particular, I think, stands out because once you get past all of the firsts and all of the groundbreaking that Hamilton did and the massive success, I think it demonstrates the true power of the musical theater form when you have a pop sensibility. And I made the guys watch the episode of Song Exploder on Netflix for this song, which just shows how Lin-Manuel wrote this track and kind of his thinking behind the whole Hamilton project. And I think the thing that really opened my eyes about this song is when he talks about how he was writing the show about Hamilton, But you can't do that without writing about Aaron Burr, the man who eventually shoots and kills him. And so you have to find a way to like convey these two men musically. And while Hamilton is like a fast staccato battle rapper, Aaron Burr is this very legato, traditional singer who has fire, but is very measured in when and where he uses it. And he has some gospel roots, and it's very intentional. There's a line in the interview for that show about how Aaron Burr is like a lion waiting to pounce. And I feel like that energy just comes across so well in this track, and it conveys the kind of character development that I think musical theater is really good at. But it doesn't fall into the trap that I was talking about earlier of like demanding that you know the entire plot of Hamilton to get why this is a good song. Like, the Leslie Odom Jr. lead vocal performance on this is amazing. He just goes and goes and goes, like breathless, angry, just awesome. And the ensemble does this really cool echoing background vocal that they talk about on the Song Exploder episode, which we'll link in the show notes, where they are essentially acting like a digital delay echo on his voice, something that I had never seen anywhere before. I just find this song endlessly fascinating. I listen to it all the time, and I think it does such a good job of really pushing the envelope of what a musical theater song can do, both narratively and musically. Like, it's essentially a power ballad pop song in the middle of this stage play, and it comes right after a rap song, and the next song is something completely different. And I just think that is so cool, and I'm so excited to see the format start to go in this direction. It feels like pressing shuffle on an iTunes playlist, which is kind of always what I wanted musicals to be. But what about you guys? What is your experience with this song? Also, I'm curious if you've seen Hamilton now that it's available on Disney Plus and anybody can watch it, because I know that was a huge moment that will definitely inform your context on this.
No and no. I actually wanted to go look up some stuff because I feel like I don't really care for Hamilton that much. I think that it's everybody, you can read this totally as like Sean doesn't like musicals, so he's just gonna hate on it because that's what he is. I think that Hamilton sounds like In the Heights, just set to his history. And that's very Lin-Manuel Miranda style.
Which is, we should say, In the Heights is also Lin-Manuel Miranda. He has a style, and that's what he does.
Right. Right. And that's what I mean. To deny that he could do something else in his same form is like telling him, like, hey, your new album sucks, play the old stuff. But I don't know. And I'll talk about this in my pick too, because I feel like kind of the reason I don't like it, and the reason that I'll end up saying this about my pick too, is that like I think this musical has lasting power because it has celebrity behind it. I think that this musical has lasting power because there's an undercurrent of rewriting narratives that in like a creative light that is inclusive. Which is great. I'm not going to have anything against that. But I think that the subject matter is a little stale. I wasn't looking for it to be like... I think that's another kind of like critique that I was looking up of it. And I think it seems a little bit like... I don't know. There's a lot of yelling around this musical. So it's like... I think it's generally understood that Alexander Hamilton in his own time, looked at in the modern day, was not a good person. I don't think Lin-Manuel Miranda is trying to say like, oh yeah, Hamilton is without flaw, or Aaron Burr is without flaw. I don't think that's the statement that he's making at all. I think he's trying to like kind of write a modern day narrative with a historical figure, and it works. I just feel like it's not for me. It doesn't capture my imagination. You know, like, it feels like when we talked about Little Shop of Horrors, like, it kind of has, like, some underground feeling, and then it got picked up again, and it kind of, like, the successful musicals that seem to get made over and over aren't really on the back of celebrity power. They're kind of, like, built on either, like, they already kind of, almost in a predatory way, they capitalize on, like, modern culture to the point of, like, almost exploiting you for what they are, which Hamilton seems to be doing. Or they like have a cult following where they're kind of like obscure and abstract, and they kind of just build up their thing, and that's like kind of what you said, Taylor, earlier, that kind of makes it beautiful in a way, is that maybe if you're lucky, you might perform to 1 million people a year, a musical, which is, I don't know, that's a lot for probably a performer, like a whole lot. There's not like a huge name.
But they're not Taylor Swift numbers.
Right, exactly. And so
they're not opening weekend of a Marvel movie numbers.
Right. So just the fact that you can have like a box office smash, or I don't know, is that what you would call it with a?
Yeah, a box office smash musical.
I mean, there is a box office. Yeah.
Sells in the millions, but a box office smash movie sells in the hundreds of millions.
Right. But I think part of what I think about and that's annoying about Hamilton too is just the way that it was a darling. And I'm thinking that it still is. And it just gets like, everyone wants to talk about it. Everyone wants to talk about how revolutionary it is. Everybody wants to, it seems to be like what you said too, like where high art finds its patrons. And one of the things that I read was like, couple who pays $1,200 for Hamilton tickets is disappointed with play. And I was like, I don't know what you expected. I don't know, like, I think there's like, I think maybe that's why I just want to tear it down a little bit, is because I think that Hamilton has been elevated to this level of art that is like so high. And really, it's a bunch of really good music put together. But then when I watched the Song Exploder thing, it started to feel like a big circle jerk of Lin-Manuel Miranda and company, where they were like, oh, we changed it up like that. Oh, we did this. Oh, did you see that echo effect? Oh, did you see that? And it's just like, okay, guys, we get it. You're impressed with yourself, really.
I mean, I guess I'll...
And we see it. It's a good musical, but come on now.
I guess I'll push back on that a little bit, because I do feel like that's exactly what we do as rock musicians on this very show. And I think there is a certain, like, enmity between the rock world and the theater world for whatever reason that is probably gendered and heterosexist and other things, and classist and other things. But I do agree. I think the, like, culture of celebrity that has surrounded this show has definitely overshadowed any of its faults, which is part of the reason I picked the song I did, because I think this is honestly one of the most enduring songs from it. I think the songs that everybody, like, memingly loves from this show, like My Shot or I'll Be Back, are like, okay, whatever, like, they're the laugh lines. I feel like this song is a truly interesting iteration of what in the musical theater world is called the I Want song, where a character basically sings their inner monologue aloud to explain to the audience what their motivation is. And that is such a, like, staple of a musical that, like, you have to have them to understand what the characters want, like, why they are on the stage. And I just think that this is, like, a masterful example of that at a technical level. The problem with it is it gets obscured by everything else surrounding this play and the historical narratives of the people. I mean, I have no idea what Alexander Hamilton or Aaron Burr were like as people, but as characters in this story, like, I definitely identify with Aaron Burr, with this person who is, like, very calculating and considered and is jealous of his rival, who can just kind of, like, everything he says is treated as gospel. Like, that's a terrible position to be in. And I think that's what really drew me to it, is, like, it is expressing an emotion that I identify with. But part of the challenge with this kind of this format is that it wears its emotion on its sleeve, and if that emotion doesn't jive with you, you're going to bounce right off it. And I totally get why that happened for you. Tyler, what are your thoughts on the global success of Hamilton and also the song Wait For It? No pressure.
All right, well, I was just gonna let Sean say his piece, because I knew once he kind of started, I was like, I knew this was gonna be a while, so, which is fine. I feel like Sean is totally entitled to his opinion. I respect it. It just seems a little critical, but that's fine. I feel like there's a moment where Sean is like, "Oh, this thing is popular. I don't like it because too many people like it." And listen, I know people out there who, when a thing gets too popular, they're like, "Well, I'm tired of hearing about it. I don't want to hear about it anymore." And to be fair, to some extent, I also am tired of hearing about Hamilton in a way, right? But I get it. It's fine. What's really weird and kind of cringy is that I really had consumed Hamilton. I'd only seen it happening, but there's like a D&D YouTube like official YouTube channel that had, for some reason, one of their people just decided to completely remake Hamilton, but like themed upon D&D, and I was like, I'm just gonna unsub from this channel and I'm gonna cringe out of this galaxy. Like I cannot. That being said, actual Hamilton is not that bad, right? Like I think there's an inherent like sort of like cheesiness to theater, to musicals in a way. Like, you know, like I think of like Hairspray like comes to mind. I think of like I think Little Shop of Horrors is very cheesy. You know, there's probably many other examples of it, but I feel like there's a sort of like a literal sort of like flamboyantness to it, something that's like over the top, very exaggerated nature of theater, and that's because you kind of have to be. That's sort of the fun. And I think what is good about Hamilton is that this is my uninformed opinion, right? Of course, I do think what's good about Hamilton is that it is pushing the medium in a different way. You know, as far as I'm aware, rapping and having like a diverse, like as Taylor was saying, like a people of color cast, or like especially with like just black people in general, I feel like are pretty underrepresented in the medium. And so you're like, you have to like at least say that's a good part. You know, like, that's good, and hopefully, like, sure, maybe this specific, like, play isn't for you, but hopefully it's sort of, like, allowing other people a chance to write something that is even better and that you might enjoy. And you're kind of, and I kind of agree somewhat. I'm kind of in the middle. I feel like I'm kind of always a middle person here, because I feel like I kind of like to try to find the middle ground here. So, like, of course, I also watched the Netflix special, and I do think that, like, sure, you know, like, I feel like in some ways, Lin-Manuel Miranda is sort of like presenting his art project, his design project. Like, I liked art school. It felt very much like you feel like you have to explain everything. It's like the over-analyzed like logo with like all the like the lines showing all the circles and stuff on it. It's like, it could just be good. Like, there's good like musical decisions that was made to make this song. And, of course, it's, like, part of Song Exploder, so I feel like in some way, Song Explorers is a little masturbatory to some extent, because it's, like, you have to explain the whole thing. That's kind of the point. You kind of want to see how people are thinking about things. And I do feel like, in some ways, this particular episode is very much like, oh, here's how I did this, and this is how I did this, and this is why this is different from this. And I do think that is, like, I feel like Taylor was saying, it really is a really interesting, distinct sort of like acting through making very deliberate decisions about the choices that were made, like say William Burr have a very different song style than Hamilton. And so I think that's cool, and I think that's interesting, but I feel like there is a sort of like geekiness to having to explain all that. It's explaining the joke, and of course that's always going to bounce off. But anyway, I mean, like, I think Wait For It is fine enough. I think there's cool moments in it. I feel like this song is never going to, like, necessarily flow well into anything else, but I don't think any of these songs are, as far as the playlist is concerned. But, you know, like, I don't think that it's no more, I would say, like, it's certainly more exhilarating than the Brian Eno song that I picked, you know, like, so, like, you know, because I feel like Brian Eno is very flat with, you know, sort of like moving parts all sort of working together, and that's the interesting part. Now, this is the musical theater is, in a way, the part that I enjoy most, where it's like, compositionally, like there's parts are coming in, parts are coming out, they're stopping, they're starting, you know, there's like lots of exciting compositional moments, and that is great. I do love that, and I do think there's a lot of cool like little bits in the song that I think are really enjoyable. So, you know, as far as a song could be in a playlist, I think this is a fine pick, and I do think that Hamilton as a musical is probably better to put on a playlist than probably any musical before it. So there's something to that.
Well, I think that's actually a great segue, Tyler, because our last song of the night comes from Sean, and this is like cutting edge, released in the last year musical theater here. Brand new stuff. Sean, what do you have for us?
So this week I chose Don't Lose Your Head from the musical Six.
Here we go. Is that what you said? And now he's going round like off with her head. No, yeah, I'm pretty sure he means it. What was I meant to do?
And a similar line to Hamilton is this musical is basically like a modern musical that examines history and kind of exploits modern music to do it. It almost seems hackish in a way to it, because I think this came out. It says on Wikipedia 2017 was when it actually premiered. So I mean, it's almost been out there for 3 years.
Which is the year that Hamilton started on Broadway, I believe. It had definitely been off Broadway for a couple of years before this.
Yeah. So, and I think with the buzz and everything, it probably had seen this. But I think one thing that I think is kind of interesting about this in general is Toby Marlowe, the person who created Six the Musical, was born in 1994.
He's younger than everyone on this podcast.
They're 26 years old. Right. That's exactly right. And basically have made a musical that seems to be doing pretty well. I don't know. I've never heard of it. I'm not in the musical scene. Taylor, you seem to know of it, so that must mean something pretty good.
Well, it was supposed to start on Broadway this year, and then COVID happened, so...
Oh, okay. So that will put a little...
Little damper on it, yeah. Just a little.
Yeah, so basically, I mean, kind of the reason that I think that Taylor picked his song is kind of... And this is why I hate this challenge so much, because I just end up saying something and I walk it back because it's me, and that means that it's clearly the best reason why.
You chose this.
But like, I feel like it takes the pop rendition of this song and puts it into a musical. So basically, to like kind of catch everybody up to what it is, Don't Lose Your Head is kind of a play on the musical in general. Six is about King Henry VIII's 6 wives. And for those of you who don't know the story, basically he wanted to have a son as an heir to the throne, and the first wife didn't work, and so on and so forth. Well, Anne Boleyn was number 2, and she got beheaded because she couldn't produce an heir, and he wanted to get out of the marriage. I think it's actually started the Reformation too.
Yes, correct.
Or at least the beginning of the what would become the Anglican Church because of divorce. So, I mean, there we go. So basically, this is Anne Boleyn singing about her finding herself and foreshadowing what happens to her as she meets Henry VIII. But it's set in like a modern kind of like, I met him online. They use like common terminology nowadays that you would use if you're a Ute. And kind of like, I don't think it like washes anything to make it a rosier picture. It's more so plays like a sarcastic role on it a little bit, because we can all agree that what happened was tragic and horrible. But you know, maybe that's why monarchies, maybe that's why all America was started, because we didn't like monarchies, because all kinds of crazy stuff happened. But that said, I thought it was pretty good, and I think that it has the ability to hold up on its own because of its style. I don't know how long that is for, though. That's kind of the thing that I felt about this challenge, which is why I'm kind of like walking it back a little bit. That I'm happy that I chose it, because it exposed me to a bunch of stuff now. And like, I think it would be cool to go see Evan Hansen. I think it would be cool to go see the Book of Mormon. If Six came here and it wasn't like outrageously expensive to see it, I would go see it. I think once all the hype around Hamilton dies down and maybe there's a revival of it, I'd go see it. I'm not paying what people want for it because of what it is. But I don't know. I think this is an interesting take, and I would be curious to know if you guys think that it's very hackish at the same time, because I don't know if it is or not. I want to say that it's not, but then I give all these reasons, and it's my pick, so clearly it's gold. So don't knock it.
Yeah, I had the same impression when I first heard it. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, kind of rubs me the wrong way. But then I read into the thinking behind it, because like we've been saying all night, like it's really hard to contextualize these things without seeing them. And what I read about Six is that, first of all, it was written by college students, which is just impressive.
Incredible.
Right.
But their conceit for the show is that the 6 wives of Henry VIII have met up in some kind of like pop star afterlife, and they're competing to see who will be the front woman of their girl group.
And they're basically the Spice Girls.
Yeah, they're like the Spice Girls or the Pussycat Dolls or something like that.
Hold on, just for context, Sean, you haven't seen this.
And each one of them,
No.
almost no one has seen this because it's incredibly expensive to see.
Okay, all right. None of us have seen this. Okay, all right, so we have no idea if this is any good or not.
Well, I've listened to the whole soundtrack, and I have to say, I feel pretty good about it because, like I was talking about with Wait For It being an I Want song, the structure of Six, and it's incredibly brilliant by the writer Toby Marlowe. You know, you're producing a show for your college where you're only going to have a limited amount of resources. So the cast is literally the 6 women and that's it. There's a band and the 6 women and that's all that's on stage. And every song is an I Want song for a different one of the women. They're essentially auditioning for each other to determine who's going to be the lead of their girl group. And they do a big ensemble number at the beginning and an ensemble number at the end. And that's it. In and out, one act. So structurally, I think it's important to know that because each of these songs is essentially showcasing a personality. And this personality for Anne Boleyn, he has said in interviews, is a mixture of Avril Lavigne, Miley Cyrus, and Lily Allen. Which, when you think about it in that way, like, of course it sounds hackish and cutesy and goofy because that's what he's trying to do with Anne Boleyn. He's like trying to play up her youthfulness and the fact that she died way too young and putting in this kind of like sassy, like Lily Allen energy and young Miley Cyrus stuff. Whereas by comparison, let me make sure I get the names right. One of the women, I can't remember which one, is modeled off of Nicki Minaj and Iggy Azalea, Anna of Cleves, and does like some rapping and is like a totally different sound. And so again, pulling that Hamilton trick of like multiple genres within the same musical, doing the like incorporating pop music. And so once I knew that and I knew that the whole musical didn't sound like this, I totally am here for it. I think this is a fun character number for Anne Boleyn. But I think as a song, it's just really powerful. Like, all 3 of these songs follow a traditional pop structure format because of the nature of the musicals they appear in. But I think this is the one that is most clearly like verse, chorus, bridge, verse, chorus.
Yeah.
And it's a strong chorus. It's a very catchy chorus. Like, you could hear Avril Lavigne singing this chorus. You could hear this chorus on the radio. It just happens that all the verses are about the life and death of Anne Boleyn. And I think that's what makes it a good song. Will it be enduring? Maybe not. I think the challenge here is that he is a musical theater nerd writing a song for a character based on, frankly, a kind of pop music that was already not very popular and not very mainstream when he was writing the show in 2017.
Right.
Like, Lily Allen is not really as big of a deal as she used to be. Avril Lavigne definitely isn't. And Miley Cyrus hasn't made music like this in at least 4 albums. I think it's a weird creative choice to lean into this like 2000s girl pop. I mean, it's familiar, which makes you identify with her character really quickly, but I don't know. I think you could have done something maybe a little more contemporary. But I guess, you know, it's a musical about pop and about fads and the fickle sensibilities of a sex-crazed monarch. So maybe it does fit. I don't know.
I mean, it could have at least been like some more like time-tested players in the game, right? Like, you know, like if you said it was like Lily Allen and Miley and
Avril Lavigne,
like Britney, Christina, Mariah.
Well, that's the other problem. There is already a character who's based on Britney and Christina.
You gotta keep going. Well, there's plenty.
It kind of feels like Anne Boleyn got the bottom of the barrel in terms of character influences.
Sure.
Catherine of Aragon is Beyonce, J-Lo, and Jennifer Hudson.
Okay. So they covered their bounds.
Jane Seymour is Adele, Sia, Rihanna, and Celine Dion. Like, I think Sean may have accidentally picked the bottom of the barrel. No pun intended.
This was the one that came up. This is what I knew about when I had access to, when I was driving home today.
It's okay. It's okay.
In the same way that you consulted your spouse about stuff, I consulted mine.
Bam.
Fair enough.
But, so I'm really worried that this is going to continue to be a trend where people are going to take contemporary music and combine it with old history things. Like, I can't wait for Cardi B to play Joan of Arc in her award-winning story. Like,
Cardi B is Anne of Tarth in Game of Thrones the musical.
Yes. Okay. Just I'm ready for it. That being said, I think I did say that Taylor's was the most like playlist worthy like sort of song, but I think this is definitely sort of like, I mean, this came out after Hamilton, so it had to have in a way been inspired by this. So I mean, but this is obviously a song that is clearly formatted to be a pop song. And so it works for that. So it definitely fits on the playlist. I mean, like, I think the idea is cute. You know, like, I'm not like... I definitely feel like the novelty of this is a little bit... It is comparable to Hamilton, because I feel like I have to compare it because they're playing in the same lane.
You're right. That's why I said it almost feels hackish in a way.
Yeah, but I mean, like, but it's...
It was just written on 100% lower budget.
Sure.
Like, there was no way that Toby was sitting inside of a castle where Henry VIII was sitting and writing this musical.
To be clear, nobody had to do that. I thought that was like, I was like, that's kind of unnecessary. You could, whatever. But I feel like you don't need a huge budget to come up with a musical idea. Maybe I'm an idiot. Maybe I don't have enough money to come up with a musical play.
But certainly having a Broadway darling before you write your second Broadway darling helps.
Sure.
Yes. Got those connects.
I don't think but I mean, this certainly doesn't follow the trend of a musical song. Like, I mean, it's like definitely like sing-songy and narratively, and like sort of like it's more narrative based than, you know, just sort of like being about an idea. So I mean, it definitely falls into the category. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's cute. I mean, it's a cute song. Like, I'm not like I'm certainly not blown away, I think, with it being like a musical song, but I'm more the sort of like you got the mixed mashing of the mashup is definitely more interesting than any other probably part of it. I think that's cute.
I would agree.
Yeah.
All right, and with that, it's time for notable B-sides. These are songs that were so close to getting picked but didn't quite do it. Anybody else notable B-sides?
I'm going to really limit myself because, you know, I could list songs from musicals all day. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to list the ones that I actually shortlisted. So, The Bitch of Living from Spring Awakening, another great rock-infused musical. What Can You Do with a BA in English from Avenue Q, which is the most traditionally musical of the songs that I shortlisted, but it's just really funny. That show is so funny.
It has puppets, right?
Yes, it's the Sesame Street's for adults musical. And then my other B-side is Take Me or Leave Me from Rent, which I think is probably the best standalone song from that show, even if it is maybe not the most popular.
There you go.
Everyone knows 528 hours, 6,000 minutes is...
Yes, no Seasons of Love on this playlist. I don't think so.
This week, I thought about No Place Like London, Circle of Life, My Favorite Things, Be Our Guest, I'll Make a Man Out of You, The Phantom of the Opera, Be Prepared, Time Warp.
Time Warp. I really thought that one of you was going to pick Time Warp.
I hadn't seen Rocky Horror.
You haven't seen Rocky Horror?
If I would have, somehow I got away.
You live in a city with one of the best Rocky Horror casts in the country, and you haven't gone.
Incredible. I should consume that once we're not in Hell World. And also, I knew several. I could probably count 10 people that probably are like, Rocky Horror is one of my favorite things at one point in their life. So, like, I don't know how I got away with it.
Don't worry, I'll fly up there and take you. It'll be a fun weekend for us once pandemic is over.
In 3 years.
Well, this is hard for me because I wanted to pick every song from Frozen.
There you go.
Probably Do You Want to Build a Snowman? Probably one of my favorite songs of all time from any musical.
Hold on. Wait.
And it's even better when it's sung on, it's lip sync on ice. That's when musicals really stand above the fray.
Okay, enough with the sarcasm. Ivan, do not put that on the unofficial B-sides playlist. Sean, did you actually have real B-sides?
Want to build a snowman?
No. I listened to a bunch of stuff, but this was the song that I picked was the one that really stood out to me. I could have picked Cats. You're welcome.
You could pick Cats.
You're welcome. Thank you.
It had a weird sexual energy.
I don't know what your deal is with Cats, the musical, and sexuality, and I don't know what gets you hot about it, but if you want to get hot with Tyler...
It doesn't! There's a weird energy to that.
Tyler has a very particular set of tastes.
Oh yeah, the leotards.
Well, Tyler, if people want to be your guest, where can they find you?
Hey everybody, you can find my design and illustration work at rootpets.club, and while you're at it, rootpets.club/merch. Pick up some cards, pick up some stickers, all sorts of stuff going on right now. And you can find me on socials as Rootpets Club on Instagram and Twitter. Please be my guest.
Sean, if people would like to show you the colors of the wind, where can they do that?
You can find me on Instagram at TellySean.
And just so you know, you've got a friend in me. And you can be my friend on the socials at TC Olmstead. All of these songs will join the hundreds of others on the No Repeat podcast playlist. We'll be back next week with a much less theatrical episode of No Repeat.
You got a friend in me.
Oh, Randy Newman.